as leaders, it's important as we're thinking about the type of culture we want to create. We want to create a culture, a fail-forward type of culture, to really think about the behaviors that we are displaying both in front of our team members and behind.
If we had the red, as I said, and we didn't have any problem solving or anything underneath it, that was an entirely different conversation. There's no red. That means that we're not trying or we're not learning, and that's not okay, because that won't move us forward. So it was, again, that cultural piece where the leaders had to stick to it and celebrate the reds as well as everybody else.
At some point, leaders just expect that mistakes are going to happen, right? If we're experimenting, we're encouraging it, and that's part of having a fail-forward culture. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. My name is Patrick Adams, and today I'm joined by one of my favorite hosts. Andy is one of my 4 favorite hosts of the Lean Solutions Podcast. Andy Olrich from Australia. Andy, it looks like you're outside enjoying the sunshine today.
Yes, it's very early morning. We've lost all power in the house and in the area, so I'm outside on the laptop in the backyard, running off battery. So yeah,
all right,
we'll get it done still.
Just get it done. Make some adjustments and make it happen. I like it. Well, I can hear you fine. I can see you fine. So I think all is good. Hopefully everything's okay with the power. I mean, that's always difficult when you lose power.
Yeah, a few trees down and things like that have caused a bit of havoc, but thankfully no major damage around where I am. So that's good.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's good. So hopefully you get your power back here pretty soon. Well, I'm excited for this episode, Andy. We're actually wrapping up a series around just rethinking failure, or thinking about failure in a different way, reframing the word failure and really looking at it more as opportunity than, like positive emotions, positive feelings kind of reframed versus negative feelings that we as humans naturally get when we fail, something, when the result that we expected by doing something isn't what we expected. We naturally have a negative feeling. We want to reframe that and really think about things in a positive way and more around what did we learn versus, why did we, or that negative feeling of failure. So the first episode was where Catherine and I were on, and the title of that was Rethinking Failure. And we highlighted a number of individuals that we all know, popular, Michael Jordan and many others, Thomas Edison, just around their feeling of failure and how many, many failures led to eventually to success. And then Shane and Catherine came back together and they talked about learning from the trenches, where they talked about again, just how in specific case study type examples, how do we take these examples and really create a safe environment where people feel okay to try things, which is going to increase the number of failures, but try new things, experiment. And then how do we respond appropriately as leaders in order to, encourage more of that, knowing that the result is going to be, a positive learning culture, a good continuous improvement culture where people feel safe to try things and continue to improve. And as you and I both know, the results of that are very high value for the company and the customers of the company. So today, Andy and I are going to talk about building a fail-forward culture. And what does that mean to be a fail forward, right? It's a little spin on fall forward, right? But fail forward. So meaning let's take those failures and let's actually use them as a stepping stone, as a way to just launch us into a positive direction, forward direction. So Andy, what are your thoughts on today's topic or this whole series around just failing in general and really just reframing that feeling of what it means to fail?
Yeah, so important. I think it's that some of the best inventions have come from failures, mistakes, accidents whilst trying to develop or create something or solve a problem. So I think it's really important, and it's a real cultural maturity piece for me where leaders are not surprised by failure, or it's a really negative thing. It's like, okay, well, if there's failure, they're trying, and there's an opportunity then to learn from that, and it just shows that people are either trying new things, or testing the boundaries, or okay, wow, we've caught this. If it could be more severe, what can we do to make sure that we make it harder to get there next time? So
Right.
it's really great.
Yeah. And the we've talked a lot over the last few episodes around the behaviors of leaders, how we set up a good culture that is open to experimentation. What are the behaviors that are necessary in order to create that type of culture? And then also helping guide team members through experimentation, controlled experiments, and keeping ourselves safe, keeping our customers safe. And then also how we react when failure happens. And that's probably one of the most important pieces, because I think I mentioned in the episode with Catherine, that even, that I sometimes get really frustrated when the same mistake happens over and over again. And I have to really step back and pause and think about what culture am I trying to create here? Do I want a fear-based culture where every time something bad happens, as a leader, I'm just flying off the handle and responding with, anger and making people feel like they can't experiment or they can't try things, even though that's not what I want? Am I making people feel that way based on how I respond? So I think that, as leaders, it's important, as we're thinking about the type of culture we want to create. If we want to create a culture, a fail forward type of culture, we have to really think about the behaviors that we are displaying, both in front of our team members and behind. And I think I love this book. Richard Sheridan wrote this is his second book, Chief Joy Officer. And he is the CEO of Menlo Innovations in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is also one of our tour locations for the Lean Solutions Summit. It was last year and it will be this year again, because we'll be in Detroit. So, this is a great place to go meet Richard Sheridan. But there's a couple things in this book that I thought were super valuable for our conversation. And if you're okay with it, I want to read just a couple things here.
So I had the pleasure of meeting Rich. Of course, I went to the summit last year, and we went out to Menlo, and yeah, what a great guy, and yeah, certainly a big fan of his work. So I'd love to dive into it.
Perfect. Okay. I think everybody that went on the tour actually got this book, or maybe his other book. I don't remember. But okay, this is what it says. In a strong leadership culture, there often isn't a need for forgiveness, and certainly not for the kind of permission we so often see in a kind of boss-led or fear-based culture. Mistakes happen quickly and are corrected early. No blame committee is formed. The organization as a whole can acknowledge a mistake, maybe even laugh about it, correct it, and move on to make their next set of mistakes, discovering along the way the kind of deliberate improvements and happy accidents that help move a business forward. I love that he said happy accidents. And then he said, a culture of leaders expects mistakes. In this environment, leaders are equipped to deal with problems as they arise with little fanfare. They bring together teams to roll up their sleeves and work as a group to solve problems. They run new experiments to improve on old mistakes. At a certain point, you might want to wonder if bosses are ever even needed. And when he says bosses, he's meaning like those, command and control kind of bosses, right? I'm going to tell you what to do. So I thought that was a really interesting point that he made, and just about, he said at some point, leaders just expect that mistakes are going to happen, right? If we're experimenting, if we're encouraging it, mistakes will happen. And that's part of having a fail forward culture.
Yeah, really, really great. And I've been fortunate to work in an organisation. We talked about them as exceptional failures, and that was really about, it was important, and leaders would go looking for, if we weren't calling out, hey, tell us something that you might have messed up, or what mistake have you made this week, those sorts of things. And yeah, we would actually be encouraged to see the lighter side of it, if that was possible. But it was, they were actually formally in some of the daily stand-up meetings was, okay, here's a shared success, okay, but what hasn't gone well, and what have we learned, and have we captured that in our lessons learned register? So there's some really awesome things that it's not just a leader saying, hey, it's okay to fail and yeah, let's have a laugh about it. Like there's these ceremonies where they'll plug in a formal step or an activity and capture that, document it somewhere. Some other things that we did, and currently what I'm working with now is there's actually a what they call a seed funding budget for innovation type things. It's basically some budget there to intentionally be used to experiment and try new things. And if it doesn't work out, as long as we capture the lessons learned, then that's serving its purpose. So it's really, again, it's not just about the time or the visible support, but hey, here's actually a bag of money, which, okay, simplistically, we can kind of blow it up, but as long as we learn from it, that's exactly what that's for. So it's that reframing, and our leaders are actually pushing us to do and spend and things to make sure that we are pushing it and seeing what we can do to have that innovative leap or that breakthrough that changes everything. So yeah, I love it. It's exceptional failures was something that I use that term today still and go, hang on, this is actually working out okay because we've learned these other things. So, and the kata, right? When we do kata and we say, what did you expect? What did you learn? So that experimentation, the scientific thinking, I think it's again a mechanism there to call it out and make sure we capture it. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things that Shane actually talked about in the last episode was psychological safety. And, it's important that we as leaders think about that in our organizations. Creating programs like the one that you just mentioned helps people feel safe because they know that it's being encouraged. There's an actual, tangible piece to that says, no, go ahead and move forward with this. You got it. I remember working for a leader at an organization that when we would run Kaizen events, he would, basically do our kickoffs as the executive. And then he would give, some boundaries and basically say, you guys have the ability to spend, whatever, $2,000 or $5,000 or whatever it is. Don't even ask for permission. Like, this is your money. Spend it as you see fit. And I trust that you guys are going to, be good stewards of that and make good decisions, but use that money to experiment, to trial, to buy some things that you want to try out, whatever it might be. And obviously anything outside of that, it wasn't that it was denied, but, let's have a good reason, call me back in. We can talk about it if you're looking to spend more than that. But it was kind of similar to that. It's like, here's a little bit of money just to go experiment with. And that really just opened up the doors for the team to feel comfortable and safe, to be able to experiment without any repercussions. And so we think about psychological safety for learning and experimentation. There's four things that really come to mind that I wanted to just kind of throw out there and maybe talk through a little bit. The first one is encouraging open dialogue. So, making sure that you're creating an environment where team members feel safe to voice their ideas, their concerns, right? Even mistakes without fear of judgment. So I think that's the first one, is just encouraging that open dialogue that helps to create that safety net for people. The second one is modeling vulnerability. So leaders that openly share their own learning experiences, right? As leaders, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to be like, yeah, I made a mistake here in front of your team. You're supposed to be the one that doesn't make mistakes, or, traditionally you're supposed to be the one, but being vulnerable enough to talk about your failures. And, here's a play area that I made a huge mistake, and here's what I learned from it. That again, by modeling that, it opens up for other people to feel safe to do the same. The third one, focusing on learning, not blame. We've talked about that extensively in the last two episodes, but really tying in the question of what did we learn? Yes, we failed or we made a mistake. We didn't have the exact outcome we wanted. When we talk about the learning, now all of a sudden it's no longer a negative, it's a positive, because we can take that learning and apply it to other things. And then the last one is establishing clear boundaries, right? Encouraging calculated risk with clearly defined boundaries, which is what I talked about, the story that I mentioned about the leader gave us basically a financial boundary of being able to spend this kind of money. But being clear about what those boundaries are and not jeopardizing the safety of your team members or your customers, I think, is a big part of that. So, Andy, I wanted to throw it over to you, kind of on those 4 areas: open dialogue, modeling vulnerability, focusing on learning, not blame, and establishing clear boundaries. Any of those stand out to you as being like one that you would say is like really key in really providing psychological safety in a learning environment?
I think that, the reduction or the removal of blame culture is so important. When we have those moments where the leaders actually say, it's not the 5 who's, it's the 5 whys. It's, hey, if we did, unintentionally mess up, it's an opportunity to learn. And hey, I've made those mistakes too. Let's challenge the system or the process. Something, whether it's I've made the mistake or they move me on and someone else comes in. If the system's still got a gap there, then it could happen again or worse. So, in that type of negative safety type incident, so I think if we know that we're going to be able to raise things that we've haven't in our minds at the time haven't gone well, and we're not going to be attacked personally for that. I think that's so powerful for people to kind of just let go a little bit and go, well, hey, this happened, and I'm just going to let you know because it could happen to the next person, or hey, it didn't quite go well, but we've got this thing now, and I think I don't know, it might be worth looking into a bit more. So, and we talk about Deming, driving out that fear, the fear-based culture and things like that. It just opens things up for people to raise silly ideas, as they would say, and then leading that into experimentation, and that's how. So again, I mentioned so many things in history. We've been doing things to maybe produce this outcome, and then something's gone wrong. Oh wow, we've got this thing that to this day is absolutely fundamental and has helped so many people. So yeah, kick out the blame. It doesn't help. People are scared to raise things. They'll hide things which could be quite more severe the next time around if we don't capture that. And as I said, challenge the system, because we're human beings, and if the more we can be hard on the problem and easier on the person, I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, yeah, I agree completely. Uh, so one of the things we also talked about in the last 2 episodes was, that reframing piece of, shifting failure from being a setback or a negative to more of an opportunity. And I was going to talk about, a structured format for like retrospectives on, I think we talked in the episode with Catherine. I think we talked about, simply just asking, what happened, what did we learn from it, and then what are we going to do differently next time. Great, structure around 3 questions. I have another one, 4L's retrospective, which I'll talk about in a minute. But any thoughts from you on how we can reframe failure? Is there anything that you've experienced or ways that you can, like strategies around, just really creating a fail forward kind of mentality when a mistake happens? How do you approach it? Because having structure around that, teaching your team some structure versus just saying, hey, let's do it. I mean, there's a big difference, right? So,
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
One of the things that really jumps to mind that I've experienced and worked within was in some of the very early lean training that they gave everyone in the organization was this whole mindset around red is good. So if we missed a KPI or a target, and the card was red on an SQDC framework that we used to use for our daily, weekly stand-ups, that was it was called out actively. It's like don't see that as a negative. What we should be looking at is if it's always green, then hey, maybe we're not looking at the right things, or maybe we're not stretching enough. So it was really about, we'd have the red, but then we would have the cascading. We would capture how much we missed by, let's say, but then where was that occurrence? So in what category? And then straight after that is a 5 why. So there's immediately, it's like recognize it. How far off were we? Where did this happen? But then jump in with the team straight away and do that 5 whys exercise just to get the thinking and really driving to root cause, and then what are we going to do about it? So it was that they were given not only the structure and the format, but also that active license. Hey, when this happens, grab the team. We will celebrate you to call and show us that red card when I walk in. I might never know what it is yet, but I can see it. And
Mm-hmm.
then we can drill down. And the team themselves are really interrogating, hey, we're all here at that moment. Um, what do you reckon happened here? So let's lock that in. And then at any time, people could go back to that area now, war room or a bay room, as you call them. But um, we can all then learn from, hey, this happened, and maybe others can provide ideas for solutions. So that was really about red is good, green is kind of seen as if it's always green, then we need to have a think about it, and it's not great. So
Right.
that really gave us license to not only call it out, but we would say turn a whinge. So if someone would say, oh, this is not working or we've missed it, turn it into winning. How do we then
Mm.
go capture? And again, if people didn't know how to do a 5 whys, or it wasn't enough to really dig into the root cause, opportunity to learn. Hey, I'm trying to do this 5 whys. I'm not really sure. And leaders could look at the structure and the flow and go, okay, oh, hang on, we might need to do a little bit more training there, or we need to crank it up a bit and get a more sophisticated tool or resource in to help us really dive into that. So, because we see that in the eyes of our customers, internal, external, that we've missed it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a great thing, because we can catch this now, and if we deal with it in the moment, we've got a lot better chance than we've got this bucket of things that went wrong on the wall, and we look at them once every 3 months. So that's just one example where the organisation, again, with some visible tools, support, and the structure of what drove our meetings, there wasn't, if there was something called out as a red and they hadn't then cascaded down into problem solving and corrective actions, hang on, guys, we're not learning. This could hit us again, because we said we're going to do that. So it just kind of took the shackles off, and leaders, yeah, if they weren't seen as making sure the failures ended up on that system, then they weren't doing their jobs.
Right.
So that's one really powerful example, and the other is just the retrospectives. I find them, it's quick, snappy. Those three key questions
Yeah.
changes the whole culture, because we're not hiding it or sending an email over here or writing it on a board there. It's like, give us the framework and the time, and we'll show you, and we'll help you get out of this mess. Or we've got a new product we never even thought we were going to do, and it's up there, and we can talk about it when you're ready. So
Right. Right. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the red green, because I think there are so many organizations that implement red green for their KPIs, and where I've seen companies that have more of a fear based culture, and they try to do that, and sometimes it backfires because they haven't done the upfront work to you know reframe what red means. They've always felt like red is bad, and I remember one leader who, whenever he would have executives coming into that organization and they were going to do a tour, he would be switching his cards to green because he didn't want to have to explain why, or deal with being yelled at, or the negative feel that he would get when they would come in. And that's a whole nother issue. We could probably do a whole episode on
yeah,
the psychology behind the red green. And but I love that you guys had a culture where it was just a conversation. It wasn't something that made people feel bad. It was, know that we have a structured approach, and when there is red, here's what we do, and we're going to have a conversation about it, and nobody feels there's any blame or anything like that. It's just, let's figure out what did we learn, and what are we going to do next. So I think
yeah,
that's super powerful.
yeah.
Good structure.
I like, yeah, I laugh with the switching of the cards, or just make that one a green because X Y Z's coming in. Had a really good leader that would, yeah, he'd be clever enough to sort of sniff that out if that had been happening, and if it was all green every time that they came in, it's like, as I said, there was that thing around what's going on here. Okay,
Yep.
am I not setting high enough stretch targets for you guys? So that actually got us a little bit more. If we were always green, we'd be a little bit more worried about that than if we could have this showing that this is learning in action here with this red. If we had the red, as I said, and we didn't have any problem solving or anything underneath it, that was an entirely different conversation. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's no red. Um, that means that we're not trying, or we're not learning, or someone's staying quiet, and that's not okay, because that won't move us forward. So it was, again, that cultural piece where the leaders had to stick to it and celebrate the Reds as everybody else. So
Yes. Yeah, and I love that you said celebrate, because we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But I want to go back to what I mentioned about the 4Ls retrospective, because I think it's good to have different structures in place so that your team knows how to approach these things. And while we were talking, you mentioned PDCA too, and Kata. You mentioned Kata too. They have their rapid PDCA learning cycle that you go through, and one of those columns that you're filling out is answering the question, what did we learn? It's part of their structure, right? So 4L's retrospective, we'll throw up 4 questions on the wall, give everybody post-it notes, and we're going to reflect on whatever it is that we're talking about. Now, this is a larger scale reflection period, and it maybe not something you would do for a small mistake or small thing, but potentially, I don't know. But one question is, what do you like about whatever happened or whatever process we're looking at? That's the first L. The second one is, what do we lack? What are we missing? From the process or from whatever it is. The next one is, what did you learn in the process, or what did you learn from whatever it is? And then the last one is, what do you long for? What would you like to see in the future? Right. So it's a great way to, again, just frame up reflection, a structured reflection of whatever it is you're looking at, and walking team members through that process can really help them to take a step back, and instead of, having blinders on or being too focused, actually take a step back and really discuss what actually happened. What do we like? What do we lack? What do we long for? What did we learn in this process? Just another example. So it's
yeah,
a
it's
good
great,
one.
those prompting questions, and they've got these key buckets where people can just focus and then go, okay, well, what do I like about this? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
maybe nothing, or maybe everything about it. So I think again, that's what I love about this stuff. We give them the time and a bit of a framework. The rest is the magic from your team. So I
That's right.
find a lot of those ways a good way to, and it's captured somewhere. It's not just a chat and everyone just marches off back to work. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's a whole nother thing. You got to do something with it. So what did
yeah,
we learn, and now what are we going to change? What are we going to do
yeah,
differently in order to take what we learned and apply it so that it doesn't keep happening?
yeah,
You also mentioned celebrating the wins. I think it's helpful sometimes to talk about tools that we can use in order to celebrate the wins, right? Or celebrate learnings from failures. Making sure that we have that. This goes back to those behaviors, leadership behaviors that are creating that learning culture. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts around how to help celebrate wins?
and yeah. Just a little story. An executive I've worked with, he actually is very passionate in this space, and he talked about a leadership training years ago when he was working in a university, quite young, but they actually went through a leadership training, and they part of that was teaching them to juggle. And I'm not sure whether you've heard of this before, but the process was every time you dropped the ball, you had to clap, and then you'd pick the ball up, and then you'd have another go, and each time you had to clap, and there was people watching, and if you didn't clap when you drop the ball, then hey, you're not actually recognizing that was a moment there where something hasn't gone well, and an opportunity to learn. So it was really saying, as leaders, yeah, and he found it so difficult to clap because he wanted to get it, and other people were doing better than him. But it was just like that mental piece there, where it was just to say, hey, we've got to celebrate these things. So the reframing for him was powerful, and he tells that story a lot, which is kind of cool. And he's then saying, look, if I'm not exhibiting that when you're having failures, the way that as I said, we had the exceptional failures, and you'd have a lessons learnt register. If we had a lessons learnt, and then it would say, okay, we don't know what to do. Has anybody got any ideas on how we could stop that from happening again, or how we could take that forward and actually make an improvement? Those types of ideas would be in a kind of in a sub bucket for our reward and recognition program. So it was really bad. Instead of you just out on the floor and you think, oh, this would probably be a good idea, or I think this might help us down the track. Actually gave a little bit more weighting to those ones that were dealing with something that actually happened, and we wanted to promote that. So in that reward and recognition piece, it was quite a powerful driver. It's like, not only have we given you time and space and a place to put these lessons learned, but if you can come up with an idea with a team and we can actually go on and make the improvement and demonstrate it's either reduced the risk or eliminated or made a step change across a few other things, that one's going to have a little bit more magic dust on it. And
Mm.
there was the financial or other types of recognition tied to that. So again, promotion of, don't hide this stuff, because someone walking through a doorway and didn't recognize a forklift until it was driving past them, for example, um, that could be far more severe if we didn't just call that out and go, well, the reason why I didn't notice the forklift is because we've got this cupboard there, and they just drive around, sort of a thing. So that, tying it into the why it's important, and part of that also was to say, well, what do you think, with Carter, is what do you expect? So it was a little moment there to say, well, this happened, but what could happen was, or what I fear could be more severe. Again, it ties into that why around why we need to get together and capture the ideas and then go on again and experiment. So that reward and recognition piece, we know, is so important with any sort
Hmm.
of continuous improvement culture. But targeting that, and that was basically another a force way in some regards to get the lessons learned on a page, because there's a little bit more in it for them than just, oh, we're going to help people and make it better. So
Right.
that's a great example of seen work really well.
Yeah. Well, and I love when companies take stories like that from employees that have experimented and, maybe the result wasn't what they expected, but they create kind of storytelling platforms where these employees have the ability to talk to their team members about what they learned in that process and actually creating a platform for that. I also I've heard of companies that create a failure of the month board where they celebrate learnings from failures and will highlight an employee and the story behind that. I think that's kind of cool too. Again, just to promote that it's okay for us to try things and for them to not work out the way we expected, as long as we learn something from it. Right.
You've just reminded me of something. Have you ever heard of terms like the pineapple room or getting a pineapple if you mess up? Or is that just an Australian thing? Have you heard
I
of?
have not heard that. Fill me in.
Okay. Okay. So I'll try and do this you know, at a level. So it's like, if something happened and you did the wrong thing, there's a term that we use down here. It's called, you're going to cop a pineapple. And the pineapple's probably not the smoothest looking fruit you've ever seen. And there's a green end and then there's the fruit bit that you eat. So there's always a bit of a laugh to say, oh, I've got to go in there and get a pineapple from the boss, which means you're going to have a conversation that's not going to be great, and you're going to get, that may be getting yelled at or disciplined or whatever. It was just a way that we frame it down here. But the thing is, if they're a nice boss, the pineapple, it's a metaphorical term for the pineapple gets put somewhere uncomfortable. And it was like, well, if they're a good boss, they'll let you pick which end first. So there you go. There's the thing. I'm going, and the big boss's room is called, or a HR room is called the pineapple room. It's like, oh, I saw Andy in the pineapple room the other day. I don't know what he's done, but he was in there. So, but what we did at one organisation is we were in Kmart, and there was these little pineapple statues that were painted gold. So, fruit ornaments that you can put somewhere. So we actually had the Golden Pineapple Award. And what we do is, if any of us in the office there we stuffed up in a meeting, or we got into a bit of strife, we would actually, whoever had the pineapple at the time would have license to then go, I present you and put this on this desk, so people could go around and see the golden pineapple on the desk. Now, that was a lot of fun and helped us see the lighter
Nice.
side of things not going well. But it was also an opportunity to go, how did you get that? What happened there? Why have you got the pineapple, Pete? And so, oh, look, what happened was, so it was just another thing for us in the leadership space to go, oh, that wasn't great, and yeah, I messed up. But yeah, and the leaders were okay with it, as long as we didn't have like the global executives coming in going, why is this golden pineapple award happening? So
Yeah.
that was a funny story. But yeah, in Australia we talk about, oh no, I'm going to get a pineapple for this. It's just There you go. Maybe you learned
Yeah,
something there. So
I love it. It's a great way that you balanced accountability with compassion, right?
yeah,
You're kind of making light of things, but also holding people accountable. Like, we've set some clear expectations, and it didn't happen. So there's that piece of like accountability, but also the compassion of understanding we're all human and we make mistakes, and kind of making a little bit light of it at the same time. I like it. It's good. Very cool. Separating the person from the problem too, I think, is key when it comes to accountability, and really making sure that we've talked a lot about this in past episodes, but blaming the process, not the person, too, right? I mean, yes, the pineapple is sitting on my desk, but but the problem, was the issue, or the process is where the issue was, not in the person, right? So I think that's a good example for sure. What about communication, Andy? Where does communication and feedback, where does that come into play in reinforcing a learning culture?
there's several mechanisms that come to mind. So if we talk in the safety space, part of the process of reporting a near miss or a hazard or an incident, there is a not only getting to root cause and some evidence around what happened, but also lessons learned, next steps. There's an action plan that's in there, and that's visible to all. It's not traditionally, it works better if it's not buried in an IoT system somewhere, and you have to actually go in there. Like there was some, again, the SQDC process was great for that. Used to have quite a story that at high level, and you could find out more. I think also when we do things around, so we have obviously the safety alerts again, where things go out and we communicate, or toolbox talks. It's definitely a moment to talk about them. But also when you're having retrospectives, I think it's really important around some things that went well. There's again, there's that moment where you would actually capture those positives that have come out of it, or giving people a backstory as to how you've ended up with a new product or a prototype that you're testing. I think that's really important. So not only capturing in the day-to-day, I guess, operations of the business, there's reward and recognition. There's, might go out in a newsletter or things like that. And I found really powerful is having all those things written or captured somewhere. But where I've found it's landed with me the most is actually having that person come and talk to the group, or take you out there, or you go to them and they can show you exactly where this thing happened, or where it's gone wrong. For me, it just resonates a lot more when you've got that person. Again, you support them, and it encourages them to tell their story, share the learnings, and if you've got any other questions, you can ask them, because they're involved. So
Hmm.
again, where Go to Gemba, that two-way communication between leaders and their teams is, everything might be going all right in the day, but then you might be able to talk to them about a particular thing that happened last week, or those. So, and I think across one thing, so working in a water utility, the way that I spend my time is quite a collaborative network. So again, they're monopoly organisations. We're not chasing each other's customers so much, but we do spend time, and we actually call out, and we need to do more, is like, here's some things that went wrong, or here's some things that we've learned, especially in the innovation space, for sort of the space that I orbit in. So again, having those networks, being open to sharing some state secrets with other organizations, I think that's powerful. So yeah, there's a lot in there again, but I just find that's real stories. I think that has the cut through, as opposed to statistics and just words on a page. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I love testimonies, stories of team members, what they've actually done. I mean, that to tie in a story into anything that you're trying to communicate to a group, it makes it memorable. It makes it real. It makes it, you can have a level of emotion that gets kind of put into that based on the feelings that someone received when they, experimented and, learned X, Y, Z, whatever it is. So I agree, definitely tying in stories. And I mentioned this briefly, but I think leaders also have to create clarity too. Like, something that for us just makes sense in our mind. Like, if I want to go from X to Y, like in my mind as a leader, I I might see the path very clearly. I might see what Y looks like and have that vision in my mind, and it may be just very clear for me. But getting the team to see what I see is important. And so there has to be clarity around communication. And, I have to ensure that I've communicated it properly, the goals, the vision, where we're heading. Because what we don't want to happen is for people to be experimenting and trying to take us in a different direction than what we have planned to go in. We want experiments and learnings to drive us towards closer to whatever that vision is or that end goal. So really creating clear, communicating clear expectations and getting clarity around where we're heading, the direction. I mean, that's our job as leaders in order to do that, so that the team members are able to experiment and try new things to help drive us, closer to that vision.
Yeah, I think
So I think that's an important part.
yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think it's so important, and we touched on boundaries before, where it's like clarity of here's where we're going. Generally find that a lot of organisations won't set their KPIs to 100% of X or zero. They strive for, but usually the realistic KPIs, there is actually a little buffer there, recognizing that hey, we we are not going to get it right every time. If we do it more than what we can show you up here is why we've set it at that, then we trigger conversations, we capture, we go into that space. But yeah, there's just like here's the playground, here's the fence. You're a team, you're on the field. You can, as long as you stay within that and get to the try line, we're here. But if we kick it over the fence or we're going backwards, we'll see that sooner rather than later. And hey, why is that happening? Let's capture that. So yeah, boundaries and clarity, it's just so important. And as you said, some leaders who've done the job before, they're just like, yeah, all we need to do is go from here to here. Whereas new people, or if they've got 3 or 4 other things that they're trying to do, yeah, it can be tough.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and when you have those clear boundaries and clarity around where we're heading, it's also a lot easier to have a level of accountability. When we are off track or when we're heading in the wrong direction, it's a lot easier for us to have that conversation versus having no boundaries or no clarity. It's like, how can you really hold people accountable, right? In an environment like that. So I think that's a key part for sure. Andy, we have to wrap up here. We're kind of at the end of our time, and great conversation. I think this whole series has been great on just reframing what it means to fail. And if you go back 2 episodes, you'll hear Catherine and I talking about rethinking failure and just really just defining failure in a different way. And then Shane and Catherine both talked about learning from the trenches in the last episode. And then here we are, really just kind of talking about the structure and what can happen if we have a fail forward type of culture. And so we'd love to hear from you on your experiences in learning from failure. If you're listening to this on LinkedIn, or if you're listening to it on your favorite podcast platform, feel free to drop a comment in and ask some questions or throw some examples of ideas of where you've learned from your failures, because we'd love to hear that as well. Andy, it's been great to chat with you, and look forward to catching up with you another time. But definitely appreciate you popping in and talking to our listeners about failing and learning and creating those opportunities going forward. So I appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks, Patrick. It's great to chat again.